Hey, Mel.
Oh, hey.
Oh, hey.
It's you again.
It is. It's almost getting a little bit repetitive, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. I think sometimes I just come in here and think, there might be a nice surprise. And the best surprise is that you've got the jug on and there's coffee and I get to talk to someone else.
You've trained me, and also, the not talking to you directly is one of the better parts.
Yeah, yeah.
So, which we're going to be doing today with Liam Dalby.
I'm so excited about this. I have heard about We Will Rock You for a long time. Back when I actually started my little side journey of radio, when they were first going to release it, I was going to get Tim McLaren on and interview him, and then just life happened.
Yes, the world went to mud.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know that Liam's a latecomer to this project, but I really want to hear a little bit about the insight to the amount of work that goes into these things, because I don't think people really appreciate that a lot of it is volunteer driven.
Mm.
Yeah. And I love volunteers.
You are a huge volunteer fan.
Yeah, I'm a volunteerer. So
exactly.
And I'm hoping at the end of this, we will get to appreciate how much you can actually get out of, giving your time to something and a cause.
I think so. And just for those who don't know, Liam is a musician, long-time musician, and he's just moved into, as Mel's been talking about, musical theatre.
Yeah.
Which I'm really interested to know how that transition went, because it can be tough when you've mastered one particular domain to get pulled into another domain when people have a lot of expectation on you.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is Liam Dalby from Albury, and let's do it.
There you are. Can you see me and my flanny?
Yeah. Proper COVID, lockdown stuff. Look at you two, 1.5 meters apart.
Oh,
yes, that was intentional.
I actually just don't like Josh, so we always have that distance apart.
Which works for me, actually. To be honest.
Happy days. So what's not to like? Come on, let's be honest. Good bloke, tell you what.
He is a good bloke. I'm not recording that bit as well.
Yeah.
I've already recorded it, sorry.
Thanks so much for doing this. This is cool.
Right, so are you happy with Liam Dalby? Just because I know Mel's going to ask you something regarding that, but is that
I prefer Jesus, but Liam Dalby's fine.
Okay.
No, Liam Dalby's fine.
Liam Dalby, welcome. It's been a long time coming, this conversation, and you and I have seen each other just day to day a few times randomly lately, and I know we've got a lot to talk about, but thanks for making the time.
Most welcome, mate. Thanks for having me. Like I said earlier, I'm flattered that anyone thinks what I've got to say is worth listening to.
We'll be the judge of that.
And if we're not, the audience certainly will be. So, Liam, for people who don't know you, I'll fill in a tiny little bit of the backstory, but then we might pass it over to you for things that get missed.
Sure.
You're one of the longest running professional, then semi-professional, then full-time, then very busy musicians that I've ever met. And you've been mostly based around this area, and, times of your life you've been playing a lot more than other times. Is that still how, removing the COVID situation, is that still how you see yourself? Is that what you are as a musician, or is that too limiting a term?
No, that's pretty much, that's the crux of it, mate. I mean, it's always been, for one reason or another, to do with, financials or, all sorts of other situations throughout life that we need to overcome. It's sort of had to shuffle in and out of different careers and things to make ends meet or to make things work. But music has always been a pretty productive, business for me, working hard at it. But yeah, absolutely. Musician, on your little aircraft travel forms where they ask you what you do, and you like to fill out what you. I'll put a few interesting ones in from time to time just to keep them on their toes, like a superstar or.
Yeah, I was going to say you can't dangle that carrot without an example.
Yeah, I was gonna, not Jesus.
Yeah,
I've been pulled up more than once and had the elbow in the side from Ebony, like, shut up, and just sitting there making up names. He goes, what is your real profession? I'm like, why is it relevant, mate? I just want to lift on your plane. But I've come up with some pretty interesting ones. But I think superstar was the one that got me the most trouble at the airport. But yeah, no, musician, mate. I think that's the safest bet. A self-employed musician.
So where did this all start for you? Like this passion of music?
I was sort of lucky. I mean, we'll probably dabble on it a bit later, but family's sort of always been musical. I mean, my Christmases had my great-grandma now, she would always have a piano, and my pop was in a well-known Albury band called the Syndicate. So was my mum at one point, and Dad, come to think of it. But they were touring around for a long time. Albury, I mean, like they used to do dances and things back in the day. He was a saxophonist and a clarinet and all those kind of things, but he ended up having to join the Navy and because he didn't have a real job. For public pressure back in the day, caused him to join the Navy in the band, so he was a Navy musician for a long time. So the whole family, and then obviously my mum's side, I don't know a lot about. She passed away when I was 5, but her brother's a banjo player and her family were musical as well. But Mum and Dad were a duo, so up until she passed away, and then I used to go along to set up with my dad at the commercial club, and he'd be carting the huge boxes. They were, we used to call them the fridge, like these bins and massive speakers they built and used to carry around with huge horse floats and stuff back in the day before technology made everything small. Yeah, so I used to go to those as a kid and listen to them play like Eagles songs. I think it was with George Forster and Andy Moore and Bob Bickerton as well at some point. There's some pretty well-known musicians around town, and he's been in heaps of bands. But started from that. So I've had music as a job. They want my parents. That was their job for many, many years. And then I think my first gig was with my old man at a pub. He just sort of said, "Yeah, what are you doing on Saturday?" I was like, it would have been maybe 15, 16, probably 17. And my sister was 16 when she started doing it before me. But he said, "Yeah, come to a gig." So he'd collect duo money and give me some pocket money. I'm like, "You cheeky bugger." So I've been doing it for the family for a long, long time. Yeah, that's where it all sort of began, I guess.
Yeah, so you're really one of the few people I know that has a multi-generational musical kind of lineage around here where you've all been live performers. And you mentioned in there that, oh, yeah, my mum was in that, and oh, yeah, my dad was in that. I'm assuming that's going to probably happen a fair bit today because between everybody in the family, you've touched on so many different acts and projects over the last however many decades.
Oh, it's crazy.
Can you just tell us, for anyone who's in or out of music, maybe some of the challenges or complications or even some of the positive things about playing music with your family as opposed to growing up playing with other people?
One of the funniest ones, my dad has no filter. He has no filter. He's about as tactful as a sledgehammer. And so mid-song on stage or something, there'll be a crowd, it's a pub, crowd of 100 people, and he'll turn around and scream not far enough away from the microphone, like a key at you or it's E flat, or and everyone just sort of turns, and you're like, what? Or some strange look, being your parent, he sort of can't help himself. I think he does with other people as well, but that's probably the worst of it. But we've never been good at practicing, so we don't really sit down and work things out together. We sort of just turn up and go, oh yeah, that's in F sharp, mate. Good luck, and listen and use your ears a bit. So if you don't know the chord, there's just a gap. But no. So that's probably one of the funniest things, I guess, for the old man.
I do remember seeing. I'm not sure if you were quite performing at that point, but I know your sister was at the time, and your dad at an O week during my second year of uni.
Was it Slosh Cod? Or
it was the Slosh Cod at CSU. And there was a lot of, I don't really know the song, but if we're looking at each other eye to eye, we'll figure it out.
Correct.
And
heaps of that.
Yeah, and I think your dad got over the line purely on experience, and your sister maybe more so on she just had a talent. And also she obviously knew your dad's looks and mannerisms well enough to know,
yes.
Yeah, okay, I'm in the wrong spot here. I need to move Well,
what would generally happen, and it's probably, inside information, I'll be shocked, but it generally would happen is my sister would formulate, like I put together a list of songs she'd like to do, and she'd know the lyrics and how they went. And she'd just give that list to the old boy, and he'd go, yeah, righto, well, we'll put that song on. So we'd have drums and bass come in, and she'd have to remember where to come in, and he would just know, being told what key it's in. And it's only 8 chords in a key, and you can generally pick the chord progression fairly. Any pop song's pretty straightforward chord progression, unless it's like Dire Straits or something with it. Anyway, so he would generally just plug along with that based on where her melody was going. So yeah, he generally.
Okay, so sorry, Leb. So it was actually. Can you just let everyone know who isn't familiar with who your sister is? Because the majority of the audience probably aren't who she is and what she did in the band. But your dad was more so following her, so she was really the leader of that band.
Well, yeah, she was asked to come along. So the band dad's always been the, I guess, as the equipment, the sound guy, the roadie, the guitarist and singing, and he'll throw harmonies in once he works out what words you're singing. And speak of the devil, thanks, Dad. And she would have a lot to do with the song selection based on her youth and experience. So she would tag along and go, right, well, this is what we should play, and quite strong opinions on that. If you ask her to play Love Shack or something, she would give you a pretty scowling look. But she basically sang and danced and led those songs, and Dad would just with backing tracks pre-recorded, which usually I did. He would have drums, bass, and piano or whatever in there, and he would play along with his guitar chords or lead breaks and stuff. So she was singer, he was guitar and singer. Yeah. And
when you say, sorry, Liam, that you did, are you saying you programmed?
Yeah.
Programmed those backing tracks and put them together.
Yeah. Yeah, do you remember back in the day when we had a JV10? Was it JV1010, old boy? JV1010, the module? Yeah. So
just for the audience, Liam's dad is actually in the same room.
Yeah, he's just come in to look after my 4-year-old. Happy birthday for yesterday, Boston. So we would have the computer, the MIDI files set up. You could just download those, and they're basically just lines on a screen with a keyboard down the other side. And you would have to dictate to the computer how long those lines were based on how, I don't want to go into it too much, but how long you wanted that sound to go for, and then you would go through individually in real time. You would have to record the drums, the kick. You would have to sit there for 3.5 minutes and click in every kick drum and then wait for it to record, and then you would go back and you would then do the snare drum next to it. So you'd be sitting there going boom, 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 and then all of a sudden the next one's boom, ting, and you'd be so it'd take hours. We did that. I did, hundreds of songs for Dad in that, but some of them you could do in time. But because the module would only do one sound at a time, so you couldn't do multiple sounds, and you pick bass tones and all this stuff. So it was a lot of fun doing all that. But yeah, so I'd set that up.
So how cheeky were you? Did you ever just throw in a real, the incorrect chord progression right in the middle of a song? Did you ever loop it backwards or?
It's tempting to throw a reverse cymbal in there, but you've got, the old keyboards that had the dog bark. Gosh, that it just every so often I thought I could throw this in somewhere, and really stir it. But no, I never did. Professionalism is the key, mate.
Exactly.
So just quickly, what is your sister's name?
So my sister's name is Akal.
Akal.
A-K-A-L, yeah. She was born at home and named after the Indian midwife. So
wow.
Her name is Akal, and Akal Dalby, obviously. And she's now in Melbourne. Was doing a lot of Spanish stuff down there with a new partner, and pretty much she's an occupational therapist, so she doesn't need to do anything. She sits back and makes lots of money.
Do you like coffee? Yes, I do like coffee. Do you know how we could make each other really happy? If you got on to punchingsideways.com and hit the buy me a coffee button and hooked me up with some caffeine, that would be great. You've just told us about all this stuff that you do without any preparation except for recording, like the backing track. Tell me a little bit about the level of practice that had to go into.
Oh, sorry about the dog barking.
Is that your keyboard dog?
It's my keyboard dog.
Tell me a little bit about the amount of actual rehearsing you had to do for We Will Rock You.
Oh my gosh. Oh wow. That whole process. So that was my first, I did Oliver when I was a kid, but at school, so I got out of that, rehearsed up that and ready to go, but I had to get out of that for a different gig. So I couldn't be there for the show. So I never really did one. So We Will Rock You was 3 nights a week, Monday, Wednesdays and Sundays. And it was generally about 3 or 4 hours each. it was really interesting because they actually the people who knew. So for the people that knew, it would be easy to understand what was going on. But me, having never done it before, I would walk into this, and we were rehearsing some scene that didn't really have any relevance, or I didn't really understand where it fit in. So there was a heap of rehearsal on stuff. You go, where does this fit in? It was really confusing. But they did a lot of practice on big group scenes and a lot of parts, and all of a sudden, it wasn't really until show night it all comes together, and you go, oh wow, I see the vision now. But it wasn't until that time I understood that there was a heap of rehearsal in with that. Not so much singing, more so words. There was like 400 or 500 odd lines I had to remember, and 8 or 9 songs. And they weren't the original words. They were words that Ben Elton had used his artistic license with, and obviously contracted with Queen was allowed to change. So they were relevant to his script in such a way that it made more sense based on what the story was telling, not necessarily what the song actually meant.
So what made you, I'm imagining there's a lot of things there. If you're saying it doesn't make any sense to you at all, what made you so comfortable trusting the process? Was it Cassie and Tim? Like, did they just make it seem like this is what we've got to do?
Yeah, look, when I first met Tim...
So we're talking Tim McLaren for anyone that...
McLaren, for anyone who doesn't know. Yep. So, yeah, when I first met Tim McLaren, he sat me down and he said, right, this is our third trialee, and I've been told about you from a few people, and la 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 la. And I was very flattered actually. He was very very positive about what I'd done. And he said, look, long story short, we've been cancelled twice due to COVID. So in the end, opening night was about 880 odd days after they first got the approval to do the show, the script. So we're talking to 2 and a bit years, right? So he comes to me and goes, right, we've done 2 years. The bloke that we had for the first 2 times from Geelong is now no longer available. We can't have him. Long story short, a bit of emotional blackmail. If you can't do it and we can't find someone else, we're out. We spent all this money on the rights and we can't do it. So I'm like, well, now I can't really say no, but terrified in the process. But he gave me so much confidence in that conversation initially. He went through some things he'd done, and I won't go into that, but some really quality things, and just the way he spoke, and I understood fairly quickly the level of expectation he was after, and his level of knowledge in the industry based on what I knew about music industry applied to musical theatre, MT, which is very different, I've come to learn. But still, having said that, was vast. He's a drummer, he's a singer, he's a producer himself. He's done countless shows in big companies with big names, and some of the original workings of the show. Not the ones that you do at high school, the blokes that wrote it, the blokes that did it. So he gave me the confidence in that first conversation that this guy knew what he was talking about. This guy sounded like he was not mucking about. He was keen to get it right, and he was going to do a good job of it based on how we felt about the Queen songs themselves, the effort he put in thus far, everything. It just made me think, look, this will be great. This will be an awesome show. And then knowing, I knew I went to school. My sister went to school with Chantel Hutchins. Was Chantel Lesberg at school, and she's a fantastic dancer and choreographer, and she did an amazing job. And Nikki Strauss also I knew as a singing teacher based around town. I knew that she had some pretty strong accolades under her belt. So I was like, yeah, this has got the right attributes to be an awesome show. And I reckon it was in the end. I thought it was fantastic.
A pretty cool thing to be part of. So tell me about that first night, the feeling, or the lead up to that, knowing that all this work, and then all of a sudden, I imagine there's a lot of anxiety. I don't know, this is just me putting myself in that, a lot of anxiety about this first night, how's it going to go? There's so much build up. Like you said, 880 days of build up.
It's opening night, yeah.
And sorry, Liam, can you also just tell people which role you were playing and what the expectation was on you as a performer?
Yeah, okay. So I was Galileo Figaro. So a lot of people thought, we will rock you, so you're Freddie. And I went, no. So I could read you the blurb, I suppose, but it's Galileo Figaro. It's set in the future, and he's the main guy. He's the dreamer. He's the guy that hears all these things in his head, all these song lyrics and words, and has no idea what they mean. And then, but he's pretty much the guy throughout the whole show that is found by the Bohemians, the group of people that the rebels. It's a bit like the Star Wars story. You got the Imperial, the Killer Queen and her crew, and they're trying to catch the rebel Bohemians, and then they find him and they discover the last remaining instrument on the planet, and using his dreams and memories and things like that, all the clues, and figure it out. So he's throughout the whole thing, sings a handful of songs with his offsider Scaramouche. She was fantastic, and it's pretty full on. So it's about 400 odd lines I had to learn, as I say, and I think eight solo or duo songs plus a few other sort of group singing songs as well. So it's pretty full on.
Now the feeling,
Yeah, the feeling. So actually, to be perfectly honest, the feeling was worse the first rehearsal I had with Tim and the crew. So there's this big build-up. He said, I went into the room and he's got this big, Liam's this and that and the other, and I'm just going, my God, what are you doing, mate? You're building this up. I might suck at this. And anyway, and then after hearing everybody sing accents, and obviously not appreciating what 2.5 years or 2 years worth of pre-practice build-up meant, and how far along everyone was, I was very close to walking out the door going, oh my God, I'm way over my head. And it was Scaramouche and a couple of the guys said, no, you'll be fine. You've come in late. It's hard. But bearing in mind, I've stood in a room with, Jessica Malboy and a whole bunch of people in front of, Mark Holden and Marsha Hines, and not felt like that. It was pretty full on. I was like, wow, this is intense. Again, just a bit of a fish out of water situation. But come opening night, other than the first song, I don't really function without a crowd. So that's why I never really audition for anything, and I never get the role if I do, because I need, a couple hundred people there, or at least 5 people that are listening. So, I struggled throughout all the rehearsals to sort of switch on and do what I had to do as just the way I function. Come opening night, it was just like, all right, here we go. Everything kind of just fell into place, and I stopped thinking about lines I had to remember, and they just kind of fell out and fed off the crowd, and off we went. So that was more relaxed, I think, than the first rehearsal with people who knew better at the time.
That does sound terrifying. When people build you up, you're like, no, just let me come in as this novice and hopefully impress you. Don't tell everyone I'm good. That's too much expectation.
Means no disappointments. Yeah.
What was the credential that maybe they were saying that you had that they tried to really push over the line with the other members of the cast? Was it the Australian Idol success stuff? Or?
No, they kept waffling on about, how well known Albury I'm like a good or bad, I'm not sure, but Liam's got a huge following. I'm like, mate, I was struggling to get 10 people turn up to my gigs. Thankfully, he didn't go any further abroad than that. It was more of a local, well-known guy, and he's going to bring heaps of people. And I've just gone, like I said, I used to post where I'm playing, and half a dozen people would turn up, and then I'd go, I might just save the energy. So I didn't think that held much water, but he seemed to think so. But yeah, that was probably the most uncomfortable. He didn't really talk about Idol or anything like that. So.
Are you watching any of The Voice or anything at the moment? And do you go, I wish I was in that right now, or are you just happy that era is over?
Sure you want me to answer this one? Yeah, I will.
Just that preface makes me want to know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
It actually frustrates me no end, to be honest. I didn't go into Idol with the right mindset when I went on there. I was quite anti it all, being, the rebel musician and not really interested in this big machine that was taking over, which coincidentally is the same storyline in the show I've just done, where Globosoft was taking over the kids, and American Idol actually destroyed music by and their fame lasted, what's the line? Their fame lasted less time than it took to play their records. That was the line. So Idol killed music. So that was kind of, to be honest, that was in 2006 my mindset. And it wasn't until I went on the concert with Kate DeRouge and Lee Harding that the producer actually came up to me after I did my 2 songs on the show and said, you have to come on the show. I said, well, no, I don't. And he said, "Oh yeah, you do," and it started to get me from here. So talking about The Voice and Idol, I'd been asked if I wanted to be in the 24 months before that, mind you, and said no because I was doing my own single EP at the time, and the fella helping me with that had some influence. And then so that got me my knickers in a twist, if you like, and then going on the show, going on the concert, that went quite well. And then they approached me afterwards and I said, "Well, look, I don't want to line up." And he goes, "All right, well, here's my mobile number." And I went, "Really?" And he goes, "Yep." I said, "Well, here's my mobile number. Just give me a ring and I'll come out and see you." So there was no lining up. There was technically 3 auditions before you actually sit in front of anyone of consequence. And then they ship you off to Sydney and make that out to be the first audition. But there's about 4 or 5 before that. So they skipped the line and I said, "Well, look, I'm not going unless my sister can come because she's better than me." And he said, "Yep, no worries, bring her." So we both ended up in the finals. But that whole mentality of it gave me a bit of a bad taste, and I went in there with a bad attitude and it showed. You know, I sort of didn't really say many nice things to Carl Sanderlands or Mark Holden for that matter. Marsha was just sweet, lovely, so sweet. But watching the show now and things like The Voice, it is just a television show. And that's something hindsight's taught me, knowing that it really isn't about music. It's about demographics. It's about age groups. It's about selling records. And don't think for a second your votes count. I have no proof of that, but there's no way that they're going to print off, 200,000 CDs back in the day of, Guy Sebastian and Shannon Noll and wonder who's going to win and then throw the rest in the bin, whoever comes second. There's no logic in that. And it is a business. So I look at it and think, oh, sure, the little, we're watching 7plus at the moment where Ebony's back into Ally McBeal and there's a lot of The Voice ads on that, and it's just all the, oh my gosh, the show would be worth it if it was just you and all this stuff. I think, gosh, they just every year have to say something slightly better than last year, and it just turns into such a, it's just not about music. And it's not about the singing. I know that for a fact because at the time, I've improved a lot since then, but at the time I was far worse than I am now. And I watched people with Jessica Malboy style talent get told to go home, because they had their demographic of Jessica Malboy, and I'm standing there going, okay, I've got long hair and I'm the hippie kid, with a beard and whatever. And then we had, Jessica Malboy, and you had, your clean-cut Dean Geyer and the Irish bloke that won it. And it's a casting program. And you all get a slot, and you got to fill all the demographics. So we're all marketed to and sold. So I have no interest in going on any of those shows anymore. I don't want to be the old guy with the kids crying on stage. I'm doing it for my kids. Wank, wank. So
okay, Liam, can I ask a question then?
Yeah.
These people that are on these shows are no less talented at the art of singing a song than maybe what they were 20 years ago. If anything, some of these young people are truly extraordinary just absolutely. At performing a vocal. Yeah. What would you say as someone that's been through that machine, and if any of them happen to be listening from around here that thinks, oh, well, one of my goals is to get on The Voice, if they've got truly that amount of talent, where would you want them to redirect that? Very
good question, because I don't think anyone has the answer. The problem with The Voice and with the idols of the world is that marketing and everything, they are the biggest machine to get somewhere. And I've had people, sort of people that have succeeded sort of say, oh, mate, just get the free publicity. Like, to give you an indication, I've heard a rumour that Jessica Malboy was actually signed to Sony before she went. So the Idol was a free publicity type thing. And that's just the way they use that machine to get people out there, because it is so efficient. Doing it on your own, gosh, I've had no success myself. I've got 14 listeners on my Spotify at the moment, monthly listeners, 14. So I'm rapt about that. Thank you, those 14 people that choose to listen to my album with Neon City and my original stuff prior to that. But mate, it's a stab in the dark. It really is. I mean, depending on what level you were trying to get to. I mean, there's great success. I mean, I've got a house, 2 cars, wife and kid, sort of thing. What is your measure of success? Where do you want to be? If you want to be Justin Bieber, then it's a long way to the top. if you want to rock and roll, and it's hard, man. I sort of measure my success as I've made it. I've got, like I said, things that any person would, aspire to have. And up until COVID, I had a successful business where I could go out and work 2 nights a week and get drunk and get paid to do it and have a really good time and go home with a wage, you know. So that's for me is success. So for a new singer, depending what they want, it's a broad question with several different answers. But you know, don't give up. Do what you want. There is a level of compromise in any walk of life. So everyone that says don't change, I think that's recipe for disaster. The amount of times I've been told that was absolute crap, Liam, get out, and I turned around and came back and did it again and learnt from that and didn't walk away. That's compromise. That's learning. But never give up on what you truly want to get. But just be aware that in any walk of life that you may not get to that level of success. But if you're shooting for the stars and you get to the moon, that's still a pretty good outcome. So you've just got to be honest with what you really want out of your singing career. I think, I don't know if that's valid advice, but in my opinion, that's you don't give up but be realistic about the world we live in and the music business the way it is, and you'll have less disappointment and more success.
Yeah, I think a lot of people now maybe are knowing this a little bit more, but if you really want, to be deemed successful, and I'm saying your interpretation of success is different to someone else's interpretation of success, but, you know, to be famous and not, like, it's a business. The same way that you're saying, like, The Voice and that, you have to operate yourself in a business. Like, yes, there's a level of passion and that's your product, is your music, but that's a product. Like, there is so much more, like you said, of decisions that you have to make. And really, if you want to be successful, inverted commas, and, you know, get 15 listeners on Spotify potentially instead of
I'm killing it. Royalties are streaming in.
I'm like the same. I don't like that self-promotion thing either. Like, I just like rocking up. You make people happy, and if they're there, then that's cool, and if they're not. But that self-promotion thing can be a little bit of a mental battle sometimes. But it
really is.
It seems to be the people that are doing more okay to sort of make that decision to maybe put themselves out there a little bit more.
You have to advocate for yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
You really do. And it's a brutal comment I'm about to make, but it's generally the ones that don't realise how bad they are the ones that are most confident in telling you how good they are. It's so frustrating. I've even a couple of the people that are doing really quite well that were on Idol with me or on other shows or other successes. You know, I was in the finals of Road to Tamworth as well a couple of years after Idol. Met a lot of really nice people in that. That was nice. Country music's good. But you see, and it's just that blind, such a brutal way to explain it, sorry, but the blind, I'm so good, mum says I'm cool attitude that puts them out there and it actually works. And you think, oh, it's cringeworthy, but, you know, they're doing it and they're doing well. And you think, all right, good for you, but I couldn't say what you're saying. You know, I couldn't say, my next album is the most amazing thing you'll ever hear. Come and listen to me. You won't be disappointed. It makes me want to vomit. But they, I'm like, turn up if you want, piss off if you don't. You know, like, I don't care. We'll all be dead soon. Don't worry about it. Just, you know, move on.
Righto, mate. Well, we probably will catch up with you hopefully in person when all this craziness dies down a little bit, hopefully.
Yeah, as soon as I get that. Yeah.
And just for anyone that might be tuning in, knowing you mostly from We Will Rock You, what is the current state of the production, and did you finish your current run? And if not, is there any prospect or timelines on that or anything you can talk about?
I don't know how much of it I'm actually sort of allowed to touch base on. Look, I would love to tour that show. I think several of the guys in the company would love to. As far as I'm aware, that's not going to happen. But I think we'd be allowed to. But based on the feeling, and I think we'd all appreciate 880 days of trying to get this thing going, and having a relatively, you know, I mean, every crowd, was capped at half capacity. So that's a bit of a kick in the guts for the people that forked out all that money to get the licenses and stuff. But I can't see that going anywhere further as much as I'd love it to be doing. I'd love to be doing that again to full capacity crowds and really having a good time and getting everyone that really wanted to see it and abroad. I don't think that's going to happen. There's probably, I know of a couple of things that are in the pipelines again, moving forward, totally different to that through the companies that we've worked with. But again, there's a level of, we've just worked for 2 years and had or 3 years, sorry, nearly, and had no guarantee of being able to actually perform and get make it a viable business decision on it. So it's very hard for people now, those same people, to then commit to any kind of investment and both time, money, wise to push forward. And that's what COVID's done, I think, made it very difficult for people to have confidence in the future enough to really invest themselves. I'm sure they will. I'm sure that's just a momentary thing while people come down off the big, ride that we've all been on. But
can I ask you this then, Liam? Let's take it maybe from the macro, talking about the whole project, down to the most micro.
Yep.
Just to finish up for today, what is one thing that you personally are going to take out of the performance, or what little performance you did get to do, a skill or a memory or whatever else that you're going to hang on to? Is there something you think back and you're like, well, even though we didn't get to do much of it, that's something I can carry with me forever?
There's a moment on closing night, the crowd, the phone's out, and I don't think I've been able to do that in all my years of playing music or being in. There's been some good ones, but that moment, singing Bohemian Rhapsody, crowd full of people, and all of the guys backstage singing along with us, and I'll never forget that. That's a tearjerker. That was just priceless.
Righto, mate.
Thank you so much for sharing
Thank you.
that.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Liam Dalby, Liam Ty on Facebook.
Yeah,
Liam Ty.
Oh, I didn't get around to tell you why.
Yeah.
There's no time. I'll tell you anyway. It's because I have 2 pages, a business page for music and I have a personal page. And when people look up Liam Dalby, because my banner's up the back, obviously my personal page comes up and they look at me patting the dog or, something silly or totally irrelevant. So I changed my name because then when you look for me, my page with all the relevant music stuff comes up, because I assume that if you're friends with me, you know who I am and you know my name's Liam Dalby. And if you're looking for me for music reasons, then and you're Googling me, then hopefully that page comes up first. So
you are a businessman.
Yes, you got to think outside.
Still in business, Liam Dalby Entertainment. Righto, mate. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully we'll get to do this in person one day, and, well, we surely will.
Yeah.
And, just if you are interested in Liam and you don't know much about him, you can go find some of his work on Spotify. And if you're a local musician and you want to hear some really interesting production and musicality, you can check out Neon City, because there's some really textured, layered stuff going on in that, and it's really a listening to kind of music in a set of headphones, in my opinion.
Fantastic. The artists in that band are second to none, in my opinion. Beautiful music. They did some really good stuff, and I'm not referring to myself. I've actually put some of those up with us, so thank you guys. Thanks so much.
Cheers, Liam.
Thank you.
See ya.
So that interview was great. But what I'm laughing at right now is Josh's ability to give himself whiplash by pressing a record button in our studio.
Yes. I tried to reach about 2 feet without moving my butt.
He doesn't have go-go gadget arms. They're just no gadget.
Exactly.
That was super interesting, and I think it sort of highlighted that the Liam Dalby in person isn't necessarily the Liam Dalby that you see on stage or performing.
They're pretty different, yeah.
He's a quiet, chilled guy, and it just leans into the whole entertainment psyche, right? Like when you're there, when you're on stage, even in MC or you're performing comedy or anything like that, you've got a show to put on. So you just flip a level, and it seems like he has a character that he can put on when it comes to performing.
Yeah, for those who haven't seen him, he can be on stage super in your face, super confident, in his own words, even a little belligerent at times towards an audience, a little confrontational, but just trying to get people involved. And in person, he is well, I'm not sure how well you knew him before today, Mel, but he's a very warm person.
Yeah.
In person.
He's quite, I don't know if subdued is the right word at all, but he's just a lovely guy.
Oh, I think subdued's pretty good. He looked like he was sitting there in a robe.
Yeah.
So.
It looked like we're Skyping due to COVID at the moment. So just so you know, it's all safety.
Yes.
And we get to sit 1.5 meters apart from each other, which I'm all about because I don't like being close to Josh anyway.
Well, if I could have got that chair any closer to the wall, I would have had you pretty much sitting in the window.
This is true. This is true. It's not like it hasn't been done before. I think he's going to try and evolve a way to just call me in as well and just be talking to screens.
So Liam, I think, mentioned after the call, and we try not to talk too much about that he had a disastrous gig. He got booed off stage during a supporting slot for a band called Kistroya.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking that he's obviously done some work on himself, that he laughed about that. Mm-hmm. When I think back about all of my worst gigs, there's a couple that stick out in my head, and I haven't really done any work on looking for the good bits about it to be able to laugh about them, like just a couple of shockers.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm sharing something that happened after the interview. I think that was maybe my number one takeaway, was that he's really okay with the idea of failing and looking back and just thinking, well, that's what happened. I met some nice people. That's what it came out. He said, oh, well, I met this person, was great though.
But yeah, you can always meet people. This is what I think about anything that you do, whether it's shit or not shit. There is an experience attached to that, and you can learn from it, or you can channel it to direct you to work a little bit harder, but never just take it as just, oh, that was shit. There's something to take away from it.
That's quite profound, mate.
It's just there. And we're back.
It's not hashtag producer Mel, it's hashtag profundity Mel.
Profundity. Look, we're back now, don't worry. That doesn't last very long. Give me a coffee. Yeah. Look, seriously, like if you don't want to listen to me being all like intellectual and philosophical, then hook me up with some coffees, please.
You can go to punchingsideways.com to buy us said coffees. And I probably won't keep putting in inspirational music under Mel's little inspirational parts in future, I promise. Okay. Thanks, Mel. We better run. But yeah, thank you to Liam, and thanks if you're a first-time listener.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And thanks if you're a many-time listener for sharing the show. It's been happening a bit lately, so we appreciate it.
Laters.